Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Welcome, Wanderers, to this very special episode. We're going to be talking to you about Starlink. Specifically, what is Starlink, what services are available, and how long does it take the average person to set it up from unboxing all the way through to where you have connectivity. Starlink is a satellite network created by private spaceflight company SpaceX. And the goal of the company is to provide low-cost internet solutions for people in remote areas. Eventually, SpaceX's plan is to have 40,000 satellites orbiting the globe in what they call a mega constellation. Now, currently as it stands today, there's only 2,500 in orbit, which means you're going to have some areas with high coverage, high bandwidth, and you're gonna have some areas with little to no coverage. Now, if you're interested in knowing whether Starlink is available in your area, what you're going to do is you want to visit starlink.com/map. And one of the really cool things is that this map is updated regularly. You can enter your address to check the status of your physical location. Now, as it stands today, there are 3 available services. There's one for residential, which has some travel capabilities. There's 2 that is specifically for RV users and is available today. And there's a 3rd option that is for business applications that tends to run on the higher price range. It's important to note that we are using version 2 of the residential unit. That now comes with a rectangular dish, a router, and 75 feet of cable, and is now priced at $599 versus the $499 for version 1. Version 1 had a $99 a month fee, whereas version 2 comes in at $110 per month. But the good news is that they're both fully unlimited, which means that there is absolutely no throttling involved, which if you're using cellular service, you're quite familiar with throttling. Now, Laura and I have been on the wait list for roughly 1.5 years before we were offered our dish for order. So one of the really cool things about Starlink RV versus Starlink Residential is that, so with RV, you can order immediately. Since it's just recently launched and people are just starting to get their hands on the Starlink RV option, I'm sure others will be reviewing that option to see how viable of a solution it is. Now today, we're going to install the Starlink Residential version, which will add portability later when we start to hit the road, but for right now, it's just set to residential mode. And we're gonna take it from just in the box. I'm literally just gonna cut it open. You're gonna see it exactly how I see it. And I'm going to just navigate through the user experience with very little instructions, or actually I'm not gonna use any of the instructions and just to see how it goes. What I want to see is how intuitive the installation process is. And if I stumble on some things, well, hopefully that frees you up from stumbling on those exact same silly things that I do, which of course I know is bound to happen without reading the instruction manual in advance. So without further ado, let's get started on the installation. Okay, a few weeks ago, we got our hands on Starlink and we're so excited. We thought we'd set it up right away, but of course, Baby Dash decided to make an early entrance. So, you know that we initially struggled with quite a few internet issues. We found a solution. This is one of a series of solutions. I don't think there's a perfect solution. Even Starlink has its drawbacks, but rumor has it, it's super easy to set up. And we're going to test that theory today. It's for my own record. I'm gonna keep tabs here and go. Now, I am not an internet guru by any stretch of imagination. I'm just your average guy. So if you want to know how long it takes the average person to set up Starlink, this is the video for you. So Starlink is an offering from the SpaceX company. Starlink is not its own standalone company quite yet, meaning it's not publicly traded as its own standalone company. But this is one of Elon's projects to offer internet to pretty much all areas of the world, especially areas that are in rural areas where getting internet access is not a given. Most recently, you may have heard a little bit about Starlink because Elon sent over quite a few satellites to Ukraine to help out the Ukrainians. Well, check this out. All right, so we've got what other people are calling Dishy McDish face. I've got the stand here, kind of cool looking. It's not as big as I thought it was. I initially thought it's gonna be much bigger, so kind of cool there. This looks like the router. This is very sleek and sexy looking. I mean, I would expect nothing less from Starlink or from Elon. This is very like Apple-esque, really. When I think of like clean, simple design, I think of Apple. So it has an Apple-esque look to it. Let's set that down right here. Got the dish, and we have a huge amount of cable here. So I'm assuming this is for the router. This is the dish cable. I'm gonna put this without doing a ton of work here. Okay. Bam. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So we've got it on its legs. We've got a boatload of cable, and I think that's going to come in handy because you're going to want to position, like most satellites, you're going to position it where it has the most exposure to the sky. So if you're under some trees, for instance, you're going to move it to an area where there's not as much tree coverage. So this clearly is going to connect to the router. You can see right here in the bottom where it connects. That's pretty cool. See that? You can tell you're putting it in the right way because it only goes in one direction. Right there like that. Now for the purposes of this test, one of the cool things about AIRSTREAM is that we do have outdoor outlets. So before I figure out how to run all of this inside, I just want to get it set up and see if it's working, right? So I've got an outdoor outlet here. I'm going to plug the power cord in to the router here. There we go. And again, it only goes in one direction. Cool. Yeah. Very, very clean design in the bottom here. I'm going to move this dish away from the router. We're underneath the awning right now, so I'm going to set it a little bit further away. We've got some instructions here. Blah, 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 blah. Installation, safety notices, warning, lightning protection. Makes sense. But I do know there's an app, so I'm going to skip straight to the app. That's how I feel about instructions most of the time. And there's the Starlink app right there. Very important note, if you're in an area with zero cellular service, you probably won't be able to download the Starlink app, so you might want to do that first. And there you go. There is a check for obstructions and start setup. So I'm going to click start setup, plug it in. Got it. We are plugged in, so I'm going to hit next. Cool. I'm going to open Wi-Fi settings. It says to look for Starlink. Don't see it. Ah, there it is. Create network. Enter Wi-Fi password. Okay, I'm gonna do that now. So that is all it's saying to do here. Let's see. Okay, so let's see if it is working. I'm gonna try for my laptop. Boop. Attempting to connect. It is connected. So the next thing to do is I'm going to
test the speed.
Test the speed, right? Let's check it out. Oh wait, no. Ah man, hold on. I'm not online. It's connected, but I'm not online. Okay. So obviously I did something wrong. Let me go back to my phone. If there was something left for me to do on the app. I was skipping to the laptop, but I should have just finished the process with Starlink set up on the app. What I basically did was I logged into the Wi-Fi network. I just went back to Wi-Fi, selected Starlink, and then logged in using the network name and password I had just created in the app. And what? It was just online. Now it's saying it is offline again. No signal received. Okay, it says visibility is good. So maybe check for obstructions. It actually wants you to take a photo. It's interesting. Point your camera up. Can you see this? This is pretty interesting. It says point your camera up. Okay. It wants you to scan the entire sky. It has a percentage meter as well, so I've scanned 78% of the sky. Can you see that? Yeah. Oh, wow. It's like little like dots. It's almost like gamified. You have to collect all the dots in the sky. Well, that is interesting. Okay.
This is what we call the Starlink dance.
Yeah, I know, right? It really is like a game. It has like little dots in the sky. Okay, so it says estimated obstructions. It's loading. You may want to find a better spot. Try new location. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move it. Okay, let's give that a shot. It says to try new locations. That's what I'm gonna do now that I've moved Dishy McDishface. Collecting dots again in the sky. And it says I need to find a better spot. What the? Man, rough. I mean, it looks like clear skies, so this is pretty interesting, but I've got some power lines, so it's kind of hard to get around those. And I've got one single tree right here. Let's give this a shot.
I want to see it move itself.
All right. Here we go. Oh my. Oh. Okay, I think I've located the obstruction. The obstruction happens to be the packing material. In my defense, it's white. And it matches the surface of the dish, so I did not see it on top. That's my answer, and I'm sticking with it. So I'm assuming we're gonna get a much better signal now that there's no obstruction. It's a piece of cardboard. I don't necessarily think that should be an obstruction, but... Okay, so, oh, what?
Cool.
It just moved?
Yeah.
Okay, you getting that? What?
It's just doing that on its own. You're not controlling that from the app, right?
Nope, it's doing that on its own. Okay, so I know which direction it's aiming, so I'm gonna try to see if I can give it a clear shot of the sky. Now that I know where it's aiming. That looks pretty good. It is not liking my positioning of the satellite. I know 100% it wasn't the cardboard now, even though that was pretty dumb. So one of the things I've noticed when looking at this a little more closely is that it has areas in red where you can see objects in the sky, and clearly the tree, the one single tree next to our campsite, it does not like. So I'm trying to go pinpoint a spot where there are no trees, and this looks to be a better spot. I was curious to see what the speeds would look like with obstructions in the way, and it is at 2 megabytes per second. And I know that if it's functioning and connected, you know, obviously it would be much higher than this. I was mostly just curious to click on speed test. That is abysmal, but it also says disconnected. So in all fairness, I don't necessarily know what the speeds would be yet. Clearly, it might not be a bad idea to have some sort of pole where I can mount it to the pole and then telescope it up, you know, 10 to 15 feet. Beyond that, in the way the kit comes with just the small stand, you're limited to what you can do. You basically just have to move it around with the cable that comes with it. I'm gonna try a few different spots and see if I have any luck. Okay, the truth is I spent about 15 minutes scanning the campground. I found an ideal spot. It is kind of, sort of, almost in our neighbor's like campsite, but they're in a cabin. It's definitely neighbor's campsite, but they're in a cabin and it's behind the cabin and there's nothing behind there but like plumbing and stuff. So I kind of like snuck it back there for now. It had the clearest view of the sky. And then I still couldn't get it to connect. And then what I did, well, because it just kept saying obstruction, like locate, relocate, find a new spot. And I was like, well, that's really weird. Let me at least test the speed. So I went to test the speed. It wasn't working. Then I realized I wasn't on the Starlink network anymore. My phone had booted me over to the backup network, which is our AT&T Verizon. So then I went back on Starlink, got some things going there, still wasn't working. I came to the router to check it out. I unplugged it because I had a tangle in my cord and I needed to stretch it out a little bit more. And once I plugged it back in, it rebooted and then boom, instantly connected. And as an example, and of course this is my experience, you're gonna get different speeds based on where you are, but speeds are as follows. Speed test from the phone to the internet, 92 megabytes per second, 12 megabytes per second upload with 32 millisecond latency. From the router to the internet, I've got 108 megabytes per second with 11 megabytes per second upload. From the iPhone to the router, I have 637 megabytes per second and 285 megabytes upload. That's from the iPhone to the router. So these are our speeds after I would like to say it could have been a simple setup. I ran into some visibility issues, but if you're in some open skies, you're going to set this up, I honestly think you could get it done in approximately 5 to 10 minutes. So there you have it, folks. Starlink setup. Now, of course, the next trick is that I've got the router outside of the Airstream and it can't stay outside. This is great for now, but literally, if you just walk up to a campsite, you can just like walk off with the whole Starlink setup. So we've got a couple of considerations here. One is security. How do we secure this dish so that it doesn't just like grow legs and walk off? And two, how do I route a cable into the Airstream cleanly so that I don't have any leaks or holes going into it, or I don't want to create any holes into the Airstream that are unnecessary. So if I can find another way to port the cable into inside the Airstream, that would be ideal. And then we can have, once and for all, a very clean Starlink setup. So more videos to follow on that. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe because we're going to be doing that and a ton of other Airstream modifications along the way. Okay, so now that Starlink has been installed, I thought it would be appropriate to have someone join us for this review. And this is Dash. Dash is rocking his new Airstream onesie. And, well, while I would rate the Starlink install as probably a solid 3 out of 5 flamingos. Do you hear that? Dash would rate it 0 out of 5 flamingos. And the reason for that, do you want to tell them, Dash? I know, right? Do you hear that? The reason, exactly, is that during his debut, where we used Starlink to shoot a live stream, which was Dash's worldwide debut, Starlink flailed on us midstream. So intermittently throughout our live stream, which we use Starlink for, it would just randomly go down. Dash was so upset that I had to put him down, take a nap, because he's just not a fan of Starlink. I haven't given up on it quite yet. In talking to other people that do use Starlink, one of the things that we did realize, or a few of the things that we did realize, is that, well, one, it is still in beta, so it's not going to be perfect. Two, we're in currently the southeast of the US. We're currently situated in Florida, where coverage is not as widespread, or that you don't have as much widespread coverage as you do in other parts of the country, specifically the northern parts of the country and more out west where you have completely full coverage. So you're going to get some intermittent downtime here in Florida. And despite my best effort to find the clearest part of the sky, I mean, it's an RV park and you're going to have trees. So while this may be the perfect setup, maybe out west in Sedona, Arizona, where you have absolutely no trees, unfortunately, with all RV parks, it's not necessarily a given. So while you may have 75 feet or 100 feet of cable, it may not even be enough. And the reality is, do you want your satellite dish 100, 150 feet away from your camper to begin with? You probably don't, because if you're like me, you may be a little worried about it just growing legs and walking off. It will improve, there's no question of that, but in the interim, we're going to continue to run Verizon and AT&T as a backup solution as well. As we've mentioned in earlier videos, there is no perfect solution. There's just a combination of solutions that help to maybe combine a more perfect solution. So I still, to this point, agree that the best solution is a combination of maybe 2 or 3 different service offerings. So we're going to add Starlink to the mix. Certainly, it will be more value when we're up north and especially out west. We're going to continue to run our Verizon and AT&T services as well. So thank you for joining us today. And as always, remember to wander local this week because, as you know, it's good for the soul.